This is like 5 years ago, so prices have increased. There's something called inflation, and we won't get into that, but I'm just going to go over kind of some stuff that this repair shop quoted, and the customer ultimately ended up paying $2,500 for this trip to the service center. All of this stuff right here is for a timing chain kit. Could have been a lot more if it needed a cylinder head. But we'll go ahead and read it off. This is not the dealership. This is an aftermarket German service center of some kind. Customer complaint. Vehicle towed in by another repair shop that didn't want to work on it. Engine started briefly and died. Will not restart. Per a mobile service place. Customer states spark plug had broke while he was replacing them. May need threads repaired. That's interesting. Verified timing faults in memory. Incorrect camshaft crankshaft correlation. Intake flap fault and a boost pressure regulation fault. Misfires on all cylinder, fuel level low. Engine cranks but will not start due to timing. They did a bore scope on it, which is a camera inside the valves. Shows possible valve contact with piston. They don't know, so basically that bore scope was useless apparently. Recommended disassemble, install new timing components, and see if the cylinders are firing after you replace the whole timing kit. So that's kind of incompetent in my opinion. Replaced main timing chain and balance shaft chain with new guide and tensioner. Replaced components as needed. Changed oil filter. Removed spark plugs and inspected threads. No problem found with the threads at this time. Replaced spark plugs, had incorrect ones. Auto light, which yeah, I agree with that. It's supposed to have Bosch or NGK. Wouldn't put anything else in these cars. The deal with the spark plug, the spark plug threads, I'm just going to assume that they probably just jammed the spark plug in there, and the threads weren't really all that great. I don't know. I'm just assuming, 100% assumption. So we got the timing chain tensioner, balance shaft chain, dipstick seal, spark plugs, timing cover gasket, which that's the upper timing chain gasket, the plastic one. Camshaft adjuster magnet seal, timing cover, that's the metal cover, the lower cover. Timing chain tensioner and balance shaft, that's for the balance shaft chain. So that's not the whole balance shaft, that's just the tensioner for the balance shaft chain. And then we got all these guide rails. There's multiple guide rails for these. Timing chain for the camshafts, that's the main timing chain. Timing chain tensioner for the camshaft, oil filter, and then the oil change. And that equaled $1,900, something like 5 years ago. They also replaced a wheel bearing, and I'm assuming that was $255. Okay, so the labor for the wheel bearing was $255, and the part for the wheel bearing was $260. So they didn't do anything with the intake manifold or the turbo wastegate flap. So that would have been just replacing the turbos. That would have been another like a couple $1,000s probably. Intake manifold would have been another like, who knows, $700 or probably more like $1,000 at a shop. So they just got the bare minimum done to get it running. Why would I say this bore scope deal? It is difficult. If it comes a few teeth out of two, especially if the car doesn't start once it has this timing issue, then I agree, it is difficult to figure out if it will have good compression afterwards, because you kind of have to have it in time to check compression. But what I would do is, you don't really want to take the cam tray off either, because if you took the cam tray off, that's a lot of extra work. That's unrelated to this timing chain stuff. But what you could do is you could... I was going to go through it all and explain it all, but really, maybe I'll make a different video about it. I'll give this one to you guys as a challenge. In your opinion, what other things, if the bore scope is inconclusive, do you just tell the customer, let's do a $2,000 timing kit, and if it runs, it runs. If it doesn't run, it doesn't run. I'm not saying that this shop is wrong. It's very difficult sometimes. I've had engines that had a baby tap. It was inconclusive on the borescope. Most of the time, the valves are completely fully extended and bend over, and it's usually just the intake valves. I have seen just a couple engines where it bent the intake and exhaust valves, but the exhaust valves are smaller than the intake valves. The intake valves, whenever it comes just a little bit at a time, can just barely tap. And then when you put it back in time, it doesn't hold enough compression. It might hold some compression. It might run very poorly with very low compression. You tell me what to do. I'm just going to throw it out there. I know what to do, but you tell me in the comments if you have any ideas. You could pull the cam tray off, and you could make the valves completely shut, and I won't go any further, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing it without pulling the cam tray off. Now keep in mind, the timing chain has already skipped, so you don't really want to be spinning the engine over too much because you could skip it even more. I'll just keep it there. I won't say too much more to give you too much more of a hint.